Howdy, I'm Dr. Bosch. Howdy, I'm Dr. Bosch P. Jordan Jr., pastor and founder of Hope Alive Outreach, and we're here today to bring a message of hope, and I'm the Hope Doctor. We do hope and pray that those of you all who know of someone who suffers from the disease of addiction, primarily drugs and alcohol, will contact them, tell them that the Hope Doctor is on the air right now, and we ask those individuals who will be watching, if you'd like to comment, if you have a question, put it in the comments, and we'll try our best to answer. We have two individuals coming in today who will be giving a message of hope, and we'll be talking about the topic, the fourth step. The fourth step. Those of you all who are not familiar with the 12th step, you all will be getting some information today about the 12th step process in the arena of recovery. You know that we're here every first Wednesday of the month from 6 to 7 p.m. And if you'd like to write to me, you can write to me at my email at prophetbasha@aol.com. That's prophet, Prophet, Prophet Basha at AOL.com. Or you can write to me at the address that you see on the screen, Post Office Box 35427. That's Post Office Box 35427, St. Petersburg, Florida, 33705. That's 33705. If you want to give me a call, maybe you want me to come and speak at your convention or your church or your organization and talk about recovery, talk about addiction, talk about how we can save lives, give me a call, 443-250-9635. That's 443-250-9635. You know, my second book just came out, The Pipe and the Pulpit. The Pipe and the Pulpit just came out in the end of January. And this is, I'll call it a sequel to my first book, which is, this is Beyond the Pipe and the Pulpit. My first book was The Pipe and the Pulpit. My wife has really got stuff going on here today. She's putting this stuff up here. She's our producer. My wife, Mrs. Pia Jordan, 40 years. She's been at my side, and I thank God for her. And so if you'd like to get one or both of these books, we're running a special this month on my website. That's hopealiveoutreach.org, hopealiveoutreach.org. Normally this Beyond the Pipe and the Pulpit is $15, and the Pipe and the Pulpit is $11.95. But for the month of April, you can get both books for $20. That's right, both books for $20, and you can give it to someone and you can read it. But we do hope and pray that you will get some information there that will help you in your trek to get clean, to get sober, and also if you want to send us a donation. That's right, because it does cost something for us to bring these broadcasts to you. You can send us a donation through Cash App, PayPal, Givelify, or you can write a check to Hope Alive Outreach. However God puts on your heart, so that you might be able to help us to continue to share this message of hope. Today, hi, I'm Dr. Jordan, and they call me the Hope Doctor. And we're so glad that you're here with us today. We're waiting for another one of our guests to come, but we do have one of our guests who is here today from Northern California, and that's Daryl. Hey, Daryl, how are you doing today?
Doing wonderful, my friend, doing wonderful. Thank you.
All right. So glad that we had this opportunity to hook up together on the Hope Doctor Speaks. I really appreciate you and I value, the experience that God has given to you in the arena of recovery. Now today we're going to be talking about primarily step 4, but at the same time, we're going to be just using that as a jump off point to discuss recovery. Our mission here at Hope Alive Outreach is to give hope to persons who suffer from the disease of addiction, primarily drugs and alcohol. And there's no one who can understand a recovering individual like another recovering individual.
Woo!
Is that right?
Come on now. You talking my language. You talking
All
my
right.
language.
Okay. Now just tell us a little bit, just a little bit about yourself. How long you've been around, and what you do in the arena of recovery.
I was introduced to the rooms of recovery in 1985. Went to various 12-step meetings and groups, and still was addicted. Did not realize the obsession of the mind. That fatal illness is addiction is a disease of the mind. And so a broke mind can't help a broke mind. And so what happened was, I love to say, keep coming back. But what happened to me is in November 20th, 1985, I had a spiritual awakening. It's as though God blinked at me. First, he spoke to me and I surrendered. I knew that there had to be some surrender to take place. If anything, anyone knows in any 12-step program is that you ain't running the show. That first step, we admitted we were powerless of our addiction and our life was unmanageable. Unmanageable is a nice word to say for your life is toe up from the flow up. And what happened was from the flow up. But what I love is that, see, God knows our minds and he knows our hearts. And even though my mind couldn't strengthen itself to resolve around, the disease of addiction, the obsession. Who can overcome the obsession? No one. They'd have no pill. Scientists have not figured that out. You can't get prayed over and that make it go away. Something supernatural has to happen. And so for me, God knew my heart. And November 20th, 1985 is like God blinked at me and I knew I would never get high again. And so what happened was when I went back to the rooms, I still was trying to be in control. I still was in the flesh. I still was caught up with fear. I still was caught up with selfishness, insecurities, low self-esteem. They call that character defects. I had one character defect called procrastination. Except for cocaine and sex, I didn't have that character defect then. But everything else, I'll put it off. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. And so what happened was I went around the rooms for 3 years without working the 12 steps. If you go to a 12-step program, it's suggested that you work 12 steps, but we show up there broken. We show up there lost. We show up there confused. We've been doing drugs, for 9 years, 5 years, smoked crack. And so I didn't really know how confused I was when I got there, but thank God for the process. Thank God that God will let you, he'll let you hang out in your own self if you want to hang out in self. And so it was 3 years when I surrendered to the process of working the simple 12 steps. And when I did that 12th one, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of the 12 steps, we try to carry this message to addicts and then to practice these principles in all our affairs. And as a result of that, I got here when I was 23. And today, a couple of weeks ago, I turned 61, looking good for 61. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And so now we've been in this process here now since November 20th, 1985. That's 36 years, 4 months,
right,
1 week, and I believe about 7 days.
Wonderful. Today, we want to talk about that 4th step. One of the questions I want to just throw out there, when we talk about the 12 steps, maybe some persons who are listening who don't know why the 12 steps, what do the 12 steps symbolize? How do the 12 steps relate to our program of recovery?
12 steps, we got 12 steps because the elevator's broken. And most of us, we want the easier, softer way. And the 12 steps were formed back in 1939 through a 12-step program called Alcoholics Anonymous. That's where they were formed. A guy named Bill Wilson and another guy named Dr. Bob. But they were formed, and I heard that Bill Wilson, hanging out with Dr. Bob, reading that good book, he wrote 12 steps. They got them from the Oxford group, 4 of them or 6 of them, but they wrote 12 steps because there was 12 disciples. That's when Bill stopped at 12. The steps are supernaturally, it's like divine providence for Bill Wilson, a drunk, to, who couldn't manage his own life, who ended up in the hospital about to die, for all of a sudden for him to come up with these 12 steps. And he knows that they were divinely given to him. And so the 12 steps are a process of surrender, a process of submission, a process of conforming, a process of transforming, a process of self-discovery, a process of getting rid of self-condemnation, a process of learning how to have some self-acceptance and some self-esteem and some self-worth, learning how to have some self-control, learning how to find out your purpose in life so you can go and serve instead of always looking to be given something. See, the addict wants to always look and see what he can be given. But as we have this transformation, we look and see what we can give away.
How is it that you went 3 years without working the 12 steps?
Same way we did out there smoking crack. We're crazy.
Okay.
What they call that is sobriety. In another program, they say clean time does not equal recovery. So what you are is, you one of them addicts, you standing in the gym, you want to get buffed, but you ain't working out. You're looking out around at everybody else exercising and wondering why your body ain't changing. And some of us, when we got low self-esteem, we'll accept that. Some of us who don't have any self-worth, some of us don't know our purpose, our value in life. We will accept, the least. Some of us learn and growing up in our childhoods is just accept the least. We're okay not having the best. And so that mindset is what I had, that procrastination, that, I'll do it when I have to. And then there's a lot of us too, Dr. Basha, that it says pain is the touchstone to all spiritual growth. And so really the pain I had to go through during that 3 years, sick relationship, some of us need some motivation to want to work the 12 steps. Some of us just don't show up in them 12-step rooms all happy, ready to do an inventory, ready to do no 12 steps, please. But a lot of people are happy that they just made it to the rooms. But there's so much more than just sitting in a seat. There's a transformation that wants to take place in your mind, your body, and your spirit. But in order to do that, it takes surrender.
Yes, because you had mentioned procrastination before. And so when you said that you waited 3 years, but then like you talked about, pain is a motivator. It's a great motivator. And all of those 12 principles are spiritual principles. You didn't mention, you kind of glossed over where it came from, but I'll use the word, it came from the Bible, out of the Oxford group. And so when we talk about working these 12 spiritual principles, and you also mentioned about the 12 step that you had a spiritual awakening. That's what the 12 step is about. Now that the fourth step says, we've made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And I just, something told me just look up the word moral. And Webster defines the word moral as capable of distinguishing between right and wrong conduct. It looks like the word moral definition of principles or standards, morality, conformity to generally accepted standards. So when we talk about we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, tell us, how did you work this step in your life?
Well, let me tell you something. All the steps are written in divine order. We don't come into the rooms and the first step is we made a fearless moral inventory. No, that ain't how it happens. The first step, we admitted we were powerless over our addiction, and our lives had become unmanageable. That's a surrender step. That's an honesty step. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. That's a faith step. We stepping out on faith. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Once we are connected to that power, then what that means is we are ready to move forward in this process with courage. We're ready. We're not by ourselves anymore. It says God is ready to take us on this journey that we were afraid to even do the first step. You know, people don't realize it's a miracle if you just make it to the rooms of recovery. It's a
That's
miracle.
right.
Last year in the United States of America, 93,000 addicts overdosed. 93,000. I just read in the paper today, just this morning, while I was having my cup of coffee on my break, a young girl, 18 years old, overdosed on fentanyl. Overdosed. And so just to make it to the rooms is a miracle. And in order to do the steps, it takes surrender. So I believe that fourth step comes after we've surrendered, after we've connected with that power, which has always been there. There's some literature that says that power's always been there. And
And I
then
don't
that
really
third
think,
step is when we
yeah, I don't really think that we can do a searching and fearless moral inventory on our own, because you were talking about the progression that we just don't jump in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous or any 12-step program and say, oh, I'm gonna make a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself. That there has to be a high power in there somewhere, and that's the progression that you were talking about. And then they hit that third step. Go ahead.
Well, that third step means that you have to turn your will in your life over to that power. You know, when we come to the rooms of recovery, our life is a wreck. And that's what God is into. He specializes in wrecked lives, broken lives, lost lives. And so when I finally surrendered at 3 years and did that inventory, what it did is it opened my mind, you know. And when you open your mind and then you trust and you look back and you realize that power has brought you there, that power kept you from hurt, harm, and danger, death, jails, institutions, and death. What happens is you learn how to trust that power. And then when you trust it, it says we made a fearless moral. Why do we have to be fearless? Because we're full of fear. You know, that's one of the big defects of character. I believe that addiction is self-obsessed fear. You know, we're consumed with fear. Fear we're going to lose what we have. Fear we're not going to get what we want. And so when we get to that step and it says we're fearless, why are we fearless? Because we got faith now. Why are we fearless? Because somebody's in our life who can handle anything, anybody, anywhere, anytime, any situation. And so when we look at that, we look and we realize I can be fearless about looking at myself. I can be fearless about looking at myself because I hated myself. See, that's the partnership that happens to help us work on ourselves. We come in here with a sense of self-hatred. That's why suicide is big in addiction. And so when we get here, what happens is we learn how to love ourselves because we realize God loves ourselves. So that means we can work on ourselves. And so it says we're ready to take a fearless moral inventory. That means let's look at our liabilities. Let's look at the things that are wrong, that have been wrong all along. And then let's look at our assets. There's some things that have been right. And let me tell you something. You realize that you don't have to be afraid of yourself. You don't have to hate yourself. You can forgive yourself. You can learn some self-discovery. And sometimes when I speak at the meetings, I look at people and I tell them, I said, hey, pay attention. I said, check this out. There's somebody sitting in your seat that wants to get to meet you. There's someone sitting in your seat that wants to get to know you. And so for me, when I did that fearless moral inventory of myself, because see, I learned how to talk about everybody else. I learned how to put people down. We do that in elementary school. I learned how to talk about you, talk about your mama, your cousin, your sister, your uncle. I learned how to project out there, but I never knew how to look in here. And so God says, you know what? Let's go inside there. Come on. It's one of the most scariest places in the world to go is inside. Because there's hurt inside. There's pain inside. There's remorse inside. There's shame and guilt and embarrassment inside. You hear what I'm saying? And so for me, when I took that fearless moral inventory, I realized that some of the bad things I did, they were bad things that I did, but it didn't mean I'm bad. I did them because I was caught up in the grips of addiction. I did it because I was powerless. And so when you do that fearless moral inventory, you get a chance also to look and see some of your liabilities. I mean, some of your assets. You look and see like, wow, I didn't kill myself. Wow. People, that's why you go to the rooms, because they tell you, we'll love you till you learn how to love yourself. And before you know it, you start to like yourself. And before you know it, man, you want to brush your teeth often, and you want to go to the dentist. And before you know it, you're dressing up, you're putting on a shirt with buttons on it. You know what I'm saying? Before you know it, you're washing your car. Before you know it, and then all of a sudden people are smiling at you. People are complimenting you, and they compliment me. And then you start feeling good about yourself when they compliment you. You say, thank you. You hear me? You learn. So this self-discovery, this fearless moral inventory of ourselves is about stop running from myself. You know, I've seen it around the rooms of recovery. I've been around here 36 years, 4 months, 1 week, and 7 days. I've seen people clean and serene, 20 years, don't know themselves. 25 years, don't know who they are. They might have known 17 years ago, 16 years ago, but this is an ongoing process. You know, I just got a new sponsor recently, and he's helping me to get current, you know what I mean, with my issues, get current with my health, get current with my prayer life, get current with my eating habits, get current, you know, with balancing out my life. And you know what? It's a wonderful thing because I'm being open-minded. I'm not afraid. I'm excited about the process. I got faith. I realize that God has brought me right where he wants me right this moment. See, that's what true spirituality is. Be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. Be with who you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be with them, and do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to be doing it. That's true spirituality. That's what Jesus had. Anybody want to know what spirituality is? Look at Jesus.
That's true morality. Based upon the definition that I gave of morality, conformity to accepted standards, distinguishing between right and wrong. I think that, you know, I know that all spiritual principles fall in that category. Spiritual principles allow us to know right from wrong. And so in that, when we're doing this, when we're taking this fearless moral inventory, you and I, well, you came around a little bit before I did, so therefore, I didn't have the step working guide, but I came around, so I know you didn't have the step working guide. When I came around, we had to write it, just write it all out. Didn't you have to write?
Yeah, we had to write, but let me tell you something. We kept it simple. You know, they got people writing novels now. You know what I'm saying? This is a simple program, but we could complicate it. That's why you hear people in the rooms be saying, ooh, 4th step. Ooh, like that's a boogeyman. I'm like, please, you just smoke crack for 12 years. You ain't scared of no 4th step.
Right.
You know, it's just because it says fearless on there. But what it is, you know, we can take a molehill and make a mountain out of it. And so I'm so grateful for when I came in you know, mid 80s, it was simple. And we did it simple and had great results.
And your sponsor helped you with that, didn't he? We can't do it by ourselves.
I had a you gotta, a sponsor is the one that listens to your inventory. A sponsor is one who highlights some of your defects, some of your liabilities. He can see some things in you that you can't see in yourself. Now,
one of the things that I came across, matter of fact, my wife brought it to my attention in the AARP magazine, and that is that overdose deaths ravage older Americans. It says the number of older Americans who died of drug overdoses hit record levels during the COVID-19 pandemic. The CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, says overdose deaths among Americans 55 and plus rose by more than 20% between 2020 and 2021. This group has accounted for about 24% of all overdose deaths since 2019. And it says that the pandemic has only exacerbated the opioid epidemic. Overdose deaths were up for all ages. All ages. I see our co-host Clay has come on. I want him to come on. Hi, Clay.
Hello.
I'm so glad that you were able to get on with us today. We're talking about the fourth step, and we have as our guest Brother Darrell, who's
How you doing?
He's from Northern California, and we were talking about the fourth step. But right now, I was just mentioning an article that my wife gave me that deals with overdose deaths among seniors, among those of 55 years of age and older. And it says these older Americans who experience social isolation at higher rates. Older Americans who experienced social isolation at higher rates before the pandemic were likely at a higher risk than ever. The pandemic has only exacerbated the opioid epidemic. And when we start talking about a fourth step, doing a searching and fearless moral inventory, I have, in my years that I have been around, I have experienced individuals who got clean, had some years in recovery, didn't do a fourth step, and relapsed. Among these individuals, 21 or so thousand individuals who overdosed between and were over age 55, many of them more than likely in their isolation, they felt rejected or dejected, low self-esteem. The question that I have, how is it, what is it that we can do, or what needs to be done to lower the death rates, to save lives, for those of us, and I think all of us here are over 55. Is that right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Clay, I know you don't want to admit it, but you are. Yeah. But anyhow, it would see. I was in a meeting yesterday, and I heard a man 70 years of age say, I've been around this program for 35 years, and now I've just got 6 months. He said the crack had me going. And I looked at this man on Zoom, and I said, and he looked, I'm getting ready to say he looked intelligent, but crack doesn't care anything about your educational level, your intelligence. You can look, I mean, I know as a pastor, I might have looked intelligent up there preaching, but they didn't know what I was into the night before. Are you with me? Looks got nothing at all to do with addiction. But to be 70 years of age and to have been around this program for 35 years and now having 6 months, it's good. But in my mind, I'm saying, well, God really was working in your life for those 35 years that you're still here. But so many are 55 years of age and older who have died. What is that?
Mr. Clay?
Are you asking
Yeah.
about disparity between people over 55 who seem to be struggling with
addiction? Smoking crack.
First of all, I'd like to say that addiction does not age discriminate, but for the purpose of what you're saying is that, you know, the 55 and older, 65 and older community, that target population has a higher rate of addiction and STDs. And that is statistically correct. The addiction component is because most of their doctors are telling them or feel that, you know, due to no harm, will let them go out with a level of comfort. And the medical field feels as though that if a client comes to them and they're over 65 and they say, hey, I've got anxiety or I have pain, then they get a prescription, no questions asked. And if they abuse that prescription, they can get a refill. They're not going to be put into that general data bank that says that they're abusing their medications. So yes, that population does have a higher rate of death by overdose, accidental overdose, and sometimes purposeful. As far as, you know, the fourth step being relevant to a person being successful in recovery, it has its perks because it shows a pattern of thinking and behavior. And it helps the person identify where they're at emotionally, because it doesn't matter how much time you have, right? And how many times you've worked the fourth step. Any one of us are subject to display behaviors and our sickest patterns and behaviors without even picking up a drink or a drug, right? And all of us are subject to a relapse contingent on our spiritual conditioning. Okay, so to say that a fourth step is a safe stop against relapse, I would argue against that. I would say is one of the components that helps solidify strong recovery in the individual, to help them to see that they're just a human being, right? And they were perfectly made imperfect, you know, by a power greater than themselves, whether they come to believe that or not. And that's why in the second step states that we came to believe. Some people may not believe that, and that's okay. But yes, I agree with you that there is a high target population of 55 and older, and more times than not, and I'm just going to go with the mental health component psychologically, by the time you get to 55, 60 years old, more times than not, we're just set in our ways, man. We're just set in our ways. And wherever we're at in life, we have come to accept that position and that status in life. And, you know, nobody can tell us nothing, because the way I'm thinking, now I'm using the I statement, the way I'm thinking is that if I apply myself 100%, I'm really not going to, my trajectory is not going to be that great to where I'm going to see a significant difference. So I might as well enjoy life. And that's the mindset. So to answer your question very carefully, or exactly, is how do we reach them? Through education, right? And seminars.
And you know, my mind goes to what happened at the awards, the Oscars. Now I don't know what Will Smith's experience is with a drink or a drug, but I do know in the Hollywood scenes that drugs and alcohol are prolific. But Will Smith is over 55. And yeah, 53. Okay, my wife said he's 53. But anyhow, I believe that I would put a label of temporary insanity in the accidents which he exhibited, which could happen to anybody. Yesterday, I heard a woman in a meeting say she had 17 years in recovery. Her mother died, and she relapsed. She used. I believe that certain things can happen in an individual's life, whether we are in recovery or not in recovery, that can tap our moral fortitude and can determine whether or not we do the right thing or the wrong thing. You want to respond to that, Daryl?
You know, I like what Clay had to say too about how we can become creatures of habit. And, you know, if we don't surrender to the process of the 12 steps, the 12 steps are life-changing, they're mind-changing, they're behavioral changing, emotional maturity. They talk about that a lot in Alcoholics Anonymous, emotional maturity. But if we do not surrender to the process, then what happens is you keep the same mind. I know lots of individuals that are 60 years plus, but can act like they're 14. And so we wonder why people 55 years old and older relapse. What happens is they probably never did the real process of the 12 steps to look at all the boogeymans in the past, to look at all the childhood trauma, to look at all the suffering. PTSD is real. Yes, mental health is real. I just lost my baby brother January 4th. He had a heart problem, but it's just like in recovery. You know, he didn't want to go and get the help that he needed. And so there's a lot of help that's out there. And Clay was mentioning seminars and things like that. But, you know, an addict is going to do what an addict wants to do. And that's the sad thing, is that they do not realize that it's jails, institutions, and death. And then now with this mental illness, schizophrenia, bipolar. You mentioned, you know, the Oscar event, and they are taking that to look, and they're looking at the core issues. They're going, how come this individual who has hundreds of $1 million in the bank, you know, who you look and see is, you know, $20 million a movie. What makes an individual snap like that? And I believe it's because he needs them 12 steps also.
Right.
You know, if you want to run your life, you can run it into the ground if you want to. You know, that made a decision to turn our will and our life over, because that's what recovery is. It's a spiritual malady. We are separated from our Creator. And when you separate it, let me tell you something, there's no connection, just like all of us are in technology now. When you get on there and it says you have bad internet connection or weak internet connection, when you are connected, let me tell you something, you got strength.
Yeah.
When you are connected, you got power. When you got connected, you can do things beyond your wildest dreams. But you got to be connected. But if you are not connected, then let me tell you something, it don't take much. I've had friends 20 years fall into depression, commit suicide, go out and drink and drug, and did the thing, you know, did the 12 steps programs and all that wonderfully for 20 years, 25 years. But as Clay was saying, the older we get, yes, we are creatures of habit. I got a chance to pastor a white Southern Baptist church from 2005 to 2015. God has a sense of humor. You hear what I'm saying? And people were coming in, and I realized they sat in the same seats. And one time during the offering, I said, switch sides. And they look like deers caught in a headlight. And it's like we love what's familiar. We love what's comfortable. And let me tell you something, life is about change. Life is about progressing. You know, the seasons change. And so if we're not prepared to adjust to the change, technology, you know, I was 52 years old the first time I responded to an email, you know,
Really?
But what happens is when you get courage, then you get courageous enough to adjust to changes. See, and I think those ones who've died, they're afraid of change. They're afraid to grow. They're afraid of expanding their horizon. So I think the root of a lot of it is fear, but it's a lot of things that, like you say, the medication that's out there, the bipolar, schizophrenia, There's a lot of that things that are culminating. That's why you wonder, do we have a solution? There better be a lot of solutions.
Yeah.
But that one individual better want to fall on his knees and surrender and say, hey, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to save my life.
Daryl, while you were talking, a phrase came in my mind that I'd never thought about before. You mentioned how suicide is up now among African Americans and others. But suicide, when we think of suicide, we normally think of an individual taking their own life physically. But I believe that relapse is spiritual suicide because there's a break in the relationship with the higher power. And I believe that individuals can commit spiritual suicide and not be in recovery or not be an addict or an alcoholic. I believe spiritual suicide is when an individual kills their wife, their children, and then they kill themselves. I believe that when that those of us and all three of us are in recovery, we have to maintain our moral standings, because the definition that Webster gave of moral, capable of distinguishing between right and wrong in our conduct, that's something that we need to maintain throughout our recovery, especially those of us who are married, those of us who have children, because I tell you, the institution of marriage and having children, if we don't maintain, we can snap. We can snap, even in recovery. As a matter of fact, I'm quite sure all of us have been around long enough to know individuals who were in recovery, clean and sober, but did something and now they're in jail. They're in the penitentiary. So when we talk about this fourth step, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Clay, Daryl has already described, his experience with that. Could you just shed a little bit of light on that from your standpoint of view?
Yeah, I'll elaborate and expound a little bit more about the patterns that I was able to identify while writing the fourth step. In the different areas and components of my life, whether it be finances, romances, family, friends, past behavior, future desire, because a fourth step for me was not only identifying my patterns and my behaviors, was also a searching and fearless moral inventory, or searching and fearless. I was searching and fearless to find out what my desires were. What were the things that I was denying myself in my act of using? I was able to identify things that I wanted to accomplish that using drugs was in the way of. And, a fourth step, although it is very instrumental in the program of, in the 12-step program, I believe that all steps are just as equal. I believe that I know for me, I've sat in meetings and I've heard the only step I have to work perfectly is the first step, or anything like that. To me, there's an equilibrium with all steps with me, and that's just for me. Again, the fourth step was just a tool where I could see a pattern of my behavior. And like I said, whether it was with finances, whether it was with commitment, whether it was in relationships, family, friends, I was able to see these behaviors, especially as they was exacerbated by drug use, right? And I was able to step back and see that without the drug use, I would not practice those behaviors. And I think that's where the moral component comes in, to be able to differentiate between what's right and what's wrong. You know,
and not only to be able to differentiate, but to act on it.
Absolutely.
Because I'm quite sure that Will Smith knew on his way up there that to slap or to assault Chris Rock was wrong. However, I believe that I think you talked about this earlier, fear. Darryl, you talked about that, certain things that can cause us to do things that are out of character. I'm quite sure that he knew that it was not morally right or generally acceptable for him to walk up and slap a man right there. It was not only in public, it was at the Oscars, and the whole world was looking at it.
You know, Basha, I'm from Boston, and don't nobody applaud and get all happy, you know, because not too many of us from Boston are as cool as I am. But anyway, I just want to let you know that the biggest avalanche always started with the first snowflake. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so if I'm diligent in my living and in my spiritual conditioning, it's a lot easier for me to brush away a snowflake than it is for me to shovel 4 feet of snow. Right? So as an individual, I could just allow things to continue to build up and build up. And although I talk about them, there is no closure. There is no conclusion to it. And it just builds up, and everybody's just building up. And sooner or later, right, I am going to pick the safest environment to act out in my worst behavior. And that was the safe environment for him. We are all looking at it like it's the Oscars. It was first time African Americans, you know, promoted the show, directed the show, and produced the show. You know what I mean? And look at all the awards that came afterwards, which that action took away from. And it gives the people, right, the opportunity to look at us, right? So we're all focused on that. We're not focused on the fact that that was a safe place for him to do that. And it was against a safe person, because there's a lot of other people that have made more horrific jokes about his wife. You haven't heard a word, much less slap. You haven't heard not one word. He knew who he wanted to voice his frustration on, because when he went back to his seat, he continued to voice his frustration. And what he was saying was, he was saying that Chris just happened to be standing up there, but he was telling the whole world. He was trying to tell the whole world. He used that platform to tell the whole world, keep my wife's name out your mouth.
Yeah.
He wasn't talking to Chris. He was talking to the media and everybody else. But all that did was have everybody else double down on his wife.
And that was the 4 feet of snow.
That was the avalanche.
You know what the gift of recovery gives us, and I talk about this a lot, is radical self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let me throw this out. Let me throw this out for a minute. Those of you all who are listening by way of YouTube or Facebook or whatever medium, social medium you're listening, if you have a question, please put it in the comment. We only have a few more minutes, but we'd like to answer your questions. And if you have a response, please do that now. Go right ahead, Darryl.
So radical self-awareness, and what we get to do in recovery is they teach us how to play the tape all the way through.
Yeah.
In recovery, we know that there were consequences out there in our addiction, and we didn't care. We went to dark neighborhoods at 4 a.m. in the morning because we didn't care. We just wanted that hit.
No, not you, Darryl. Not you, Darryl.
Come on, even me.
Do they
Even
have
me.
dark neighborhoods in California?
We got some
What?
dark ones here. So, but in recovery, what they tell us is they say play the tape through. And so what happens is that's why the inventory is so important, because we get in touch with emotions that are deep down inside us. But if you don't deal with those emotions will deal with you.
Yes.
And that's what we've seen happen. We've seen someone who, you know, burying it, and then the volcano erupted. And let me tell you something, the consequences, I heard the end of Mr. Will is out there in Arabia somewhere. Some king flew him out there to go and hang out with him. But let me tell you something, us in the rooms of recovery are more fortunate.
Yes.
We get to go in there where we put $1 in the basket and we get to shed our souls. And you don't have to do it at a meeting all the time. You get a sponsor that you meet at Starbucks with, and you tell him about your resentments. You tell him about your fears. You tell him about your anger is starting to rise about something. And you know what we do? We have a process to deal with that. Now, ain't that sad? You can have $150 million in the bank, but no process to deal with your hurt emotions. And I'm sure that some people have reached out and all that. But if you don't get the help, then you don't receive the help. And then afterward, you want the help.
And I had shared with my wife that I hope and pray that suicide does not become an option for Will, because of the way in which the world is coming down on him. We have about 6-7 minutes left, and for those individuals who are in our listening audience who suffer from the disease of addiction, I'd like for our guests to just share a few words of hope to them if they're still using, or if they have a family member who is caught up in the drugs or alcohol. I want you all to just give them some hope. I'll start off with Daryl.
We were breaking up. What was the question again? It was breaking up my internet.
Okay, some persons out there in the radio in the listening audience who either they might be suffering from the disease of addiction themselves, or maybe they have a family member who suffered from the disease of addiction, or a loved one, or someone on their job, and they feel hopeless. Give them some hope.
The hope shot is that if you're breathing, then there's still hope for you, you know. But you have to want to participate in your own recovery. Recovery is an individual thing until a person wants to come together with another group of people, and then it's a we thing. But you know, for me, pray. Where there's much prayer, there's much power. Where there's little prayer, there's little power. So realize that there's always hope. You know, you're looking at 3 individuals here. At one time, we were hopeless. At one time, my life was unmanageable. What happened with us? We surrendered to this process. And like I say, it takes a miracle to make it into the rooms of recovery. And then it takes work to stay there. So, you know, it's easier said to talk about it than it is to do it. That's for sure. But they're all never give up hope.
Thank you so much, Daryl. Brother Clay?
Yeah, I was addicted to drugs over 25 years of my life. I've been to prison 9 times, and I have a job that is beyond my wildest dreams. You know, I have executive orders of clemency from the governor, level 2 exemptions from DCF, ACA, Florida Department of Health, Florida Certification Board. You can do anything you want to do in recovery.
Clay, you just tapped on something, man, that is totally magnanimous, and that is that God can do what he chooses to do with anyone he chooses to do it with. He can raise us as high as the tallest mountains, as tall as the pine tree. He can go down into the deepest depths of the darkest pit and bring us up. And I honestly and truly believe that the further down we were, the deeper we were in darkness and depression and hopelessness and drug addiction and alcoholism And the farther down that God had to reach to bring us out, the higher that he'll take us to pinnacles of glory and mercy and fantabulism, if that's a word. He'll
It
take us
is
there.
now.
He'll take us there. Yeah, I believe that. Because, how in the world does a man go from being in prison 9 times to having all these accolades by the state and others and having this kind of position? That's just not that's inexplicable.
Yeah.
Who
How?
knew?
Who knew?
Who knew?
Who knew? Listen. I can remember, listen, it was a Sunday night, man. A Sunday night. I've been in church all day and I wanted to go get high, right? So I went to see my cocaine dealer, right? And so I was driving this late model Mercedes Benz that had a sunroof, right? And so what happened was, it was about 2:00 in the morning, and I went to my man's house, and he wouldn't open the door. So I got back in my car, and all of a sudden I said, wait a minute, let me make this one last chance. And so I stood up on my front seat, man, through the sunroof. And I said, hey, man, hey, come down here. I'm down here, man. And I saw the curtain move, right? And I saw his finger go up, like in other words, all right, man, I'll be right down, right? Now, how in the world does God take a man from acting insane at 2:00 in a residential neighborhood, telling a dope man to come and give him some dope, to raise him up to a pinnacle, man, where I'm able to speak to thousands in churches and conferences and tell people my story and write 2 books and give people hope and get accolades from the mayor and governors. And I'm not blowing my horn. I'm just giving a report for those who are listening, to let them know that what God has done for the 3 of us, he'll do for you.
Come on.
Yeah. And Daryl, tell us how he brought you. Where'd he bring you from?
Let me tell you something. You got that book from the pipe to the pulpit. I went from the pipe to the pulpit also. And, I didn't want to be a minister. But let me tell you something. When you surrender your life, let me tell you something, because you didn't have a life, he gets control of your life. And I'm also married to a beautiful woman that I met when I went back to church in 1988. I'll be married to her this June, 31 years. Got 2 beautiful daughters. My baby girl's getting a dual master's degree in criminal justice and counseling. And so, you know what? I'm just blown away at my new life. And that's what happens, folks, if you surrender. Yes, if you can surrender, the more, see, recovery not like a vending machine. If you go up to a vending machine, you don't put nothing in, you ain't getting nothing out. Ain't that right, Clay? But if you put something in, let me tell you something, you're going to receive, and so that's where I'm at, man. I got my best life right now. I've been on my same job 36 years. I was smoking crack when I got hired here, October 1st, 1985. And God blinked at me 50 days later. And let me tell you something, I ain't never looked back. And so that's what we are. We are light. We are hope for those who are suffering, those who are struggling, even in the rooms of recovery. Because we think that it's bad for people who are out there in the streets. What about those who make it to the rooms, but never have a spiritual awakening? Never deal with character defects and shortcomings. Never do a fearless moral inventory of themselves. A lot of them are more miserable than people that are out there using. And so, you know what? This is about surrendering to the process, surrendering fully, and then reap the rewards.
All right. Thank you so much. I want you to know I appreciate you for flying in from Northern California, Daryl. And I appreciate you, Clay, for flying in from Tampa, North St. Pete. All right. And those persons who are listening, if you want to get in contact with me, you can call me at 443.
The phone's ringing already.
250-9635.
Phone's off the hook.
My wife has set the alarm, and I didn't even know that's the first time that's ever happened. But anyhow, that's her hand.
Hey,
Right.
Miss Pia.
Yeah, there's a hand governing everything behind it. The unseen hand, not God's hand, but it's unseen. But anyhow, if you want to get in contact with me, give us a call, 443-250-9635. That's 443-250-9635. If you want to have me to come and do a book signing, come and speak to your congregation, to your convention, your conference on addiction and recovery, you can write to me. My email is prophet, Prophet, prophetbasha@AOL.com. Or you go to our website. The website is right there on the screen, www.hopealiveoutreach.org. Well, I'm Dr. Jordan. And remember, no matter what's going on with you today, there is hope for you. I'm the Hope Doctor. Have a great day.